Hi guys. Okay, so this video is going to be about Brennan's alibi. What the evidence actually shows happened on this day. Not the confession that Ken Kratz spread around of what they want to believe happened. This is witnesses and things that can be verified through phone records and other statements and other witnesses that are related and not related to the family who can verify that this is how it actually happened. So we'll just get right in. Sometime between 3:30 and 3:40, the bus driver drops off Blaine and Brendan. This is from her testimony. It takes the boys about 5 minutes to walk up the road to get to their house. So around 3:45 is when Brendan and Blaine get home. I know that in one of the statements it says something about Brendan going and getting mail, and that was the excuse, I guess, to go over to Stephen's house. But that didn't happen. Obviously, later on, Dolores is the one that brought the mail to Stephen. So anyway, Brendan and Blaine go home. Brendan plays PlayStation when he gets home. So for about an hour or so, Brendan is playing PlayStation. He doesn't leave the house, unlike the other, the phone call where he tells his mom, well, I went over there before she could, because she says, how could that be? You were at home at 5 when I got home. And he says, well, I was over there before you got home, and then I came back before you got home. That didn't happen. He was playing PlayStation, otherwise Blaine would have noticed that he was gone. So anyway, around 4:45 or 5 o'clock is when Barb gets home from work. At 5 o'clock, Blaine's friend called and invited him to go with him to supervise his little brother's trick-or-treating. And Blaine knows that Barb was home at that time because he had to ask her for permission to go. And then sometime 5-ish is what Bobby says, is when Bobby comes home from hunting. And he goes back to sleep because he has to go to work later that night. Then sometime between 5:15 and 5:30 was when Scott comes to the house to pick up Barb to go visit his mother in the hospital. So all the way up to this time, Barb is there, Blaine is there, Brendan is there. They're all at home. They all see each other. Barb leaves, like I said, between 5:15 and 5:30. And then at 5:20 was when Blaine was picked up by his friend's mom to go have dinner at their house and then go supervise the boys trick-or-treating. So at this point, finally, at 5:20 was when Brendan was home by himself. So we know at least until 5:20 so far. We know at least until 5:20 that Brendan is at home because people see him at home. Now, here's where other witnesses and phone records come in. At 5:30, so 10 minutes after Blaine leaves, 10 minutes after he leaves, Brendan calls his friend and then watches TV. Don't know how long Brendan's on the phone with his friend, but there's a 30-minute time period in there between when he called his friend and 6 o'clock when Blaine's boss called and asked for Blaine and talked to Brendan. Brendan told him that Blaine went trick-or-treating and he's not home. So 6 o'clock, we know Brendan is still home. Now, we don't know for sure what Brendan was doing between 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock when the next phone call comes in, but this is, I believe, at the point where somewhere in here he's watching TV and he's making himself something to eat. So he's having dinner. But I don't have times for that. But that would be when these things would be happening. So 7 o'clock was when Stephen called and invited Brendan to come over to the bonfire. He wanted some help picking things up around the yard and throwing them into the fire. We don't know at what point Brendan goes over to Stevens exactly. We just know that reportedly there was another phone call from Steven to Brendan. Hey, where you at? What's taking you so long? And Brendan says, I'm just getting ready. So, you know, he's changing his clothes, finishing his dinner. We don't know for sure exactly what he's doing, but he doesn't go right over at 7 o'clock when Steven calls. But he's already gone by 7:30 to 7:45 when Scott drops Barb back off at home, because Scott talks about seeing Steven and one of her sons standing out by the bonfire. So that's not very much time, just so you know. We're talking about sometime after 7, but before 7:30 to 7:45, so somewhere between, at most, 30 to 45 minutes, at the very most. 30 to 45 minutes for raping, torturing, murdering, cutting, slashing, throwing a body on the fire is supposed to have happened. That's not possible. She wasn't in shooting and all this other stuff, right? That's not possible. It's not enough time for all these things to have occurred. I'm telling you, they did not happen. There is no evidence of them happening, and that's why. Because first of all, there was no time for that to have happened. It's all made up. So 7:30 to 7:45, Scott drops Barb off at home. And then at 9 o'clock, Bobby wakes up to get ready for work and leaves around 9:30. So Barb is home. Bobby just got up. And then around 9 o'clock, sometime between 9 and 9:30, Barb calls over at Steven's house to tell him to have Brendan home by 10. And then around 9:30 is when Blaine comes home from trick-or-treating. At some point, this is before Bobby leaves, Blaine comes home, because Blaine says that he sees Brendan, Barb, and Bobby all at home when he gets there. So here's the little problem I have with this. Brendan says that he comes home from helping Steven with the bonfire around 10:30. Talks to Barb about, you know, her visit with Scott's mom, and then he goes to bed. So there is an hour difference here, and I don't know if this is because the time changed that day and maybe he was confused about what time he got home. I don't know, but Blaine says that he was home by 9:30. So either way, we're talking an hour difference. Still not enough time to do all those terrible things that were supposedly done. So like I said, there's a lot to it, and I hope that no one believes that this confession, this whole story that Ken Kratz put out on the media could have possibly happened, because there's just no way. There's no evidence, none, not one single tiny little bit of evidence to prove that any of this stuff happened. There's just none. The lack of evidence is pretty freaking amazing, actually. So anyone who has been into the trailer or in the garage or looked at the testimony, looked at the evidence, pictures, looked at, you know, anything in the trial, this is not brought up in Stephen Avery's trial at all, because there's no evidence to back it up. This whole story that Ken put in the media just didn't happen. This timeline that I just gave you is about the most accurate, reasonable thing that could have happened, because it's not very eventful. This is kind of a normal sort of thing. So there's nothing especially special to remember or recall about this. So it makes sense why there could be a little bit of time discrepancies, but you know, if you did anything special that day, you probably would remember, because at this point we're talking just a few days later, that people are talked to and interviewed. And you know, like I said, there's phone records, there's interviews, there's outside witnesses who can all back this up. There's no way this happened. There's no way Brennan was involved in anything. It doesn't really say much for Stephen because he had all that time where Brennan was not there. I still believe that Stephen is innocent as well, but Brennan is really his only alibi, and that is exactly why they went after Brendan, because any little thing that they could come up with, because they didn't have the evidence, they had to go after Brendan to destroy Stephen's story, being his only alibi. Even though it was only for a short time, going after Brendan was not that hard for them. Unfortunately, he was easily manipulated into all the input that they gave him story-wise and things. I'm gonna probably do another video on his confession, because that is probably, besides the press conference and all this other stuff, that is probably the second biggest thing that just infuriates me, for so many reasons. And I know I've already done a video about it, but I don't think I could possibly say enough about how wrong this whole interrogation process was with Brendan. But here you go. There's a timeline. That didn't happen. None of the things that Ken Kratz said in that press conference were true. Could be backed up with evidence. That thing was done just for shock value, to help him win a case. And that's all there is to it. He's got to contaminate that jury pool, because he doesn't really have any evidence. There's none. So anyway, I want to mention the Clue TV, because this is really super exciting. Please, everybody, go check it out. We're just starting to get the web page put together, and we have the, what's it called? The GoFundMe. There we go. We've got the GoFundMe up and going, and it's already helping to start buying equipment and things like that. Lots of things going on behind the scenes with getting paperwork going, attorneys, rights, all this other stuff that I'm not even aware of, bought, paid for, and things like that. So this money really is helpful to get this whole thing going. So please donate if you can, share as much as possible everywhere, and check it out. Hopefully we'll have some stuff on there pretty soon, any day now, I think. Cannot wait to get started on all of the cases, wrongful convictions and things like that need to be looked into. There's so much that's going to be on this website. It's going to be amazing. So please check it out and donate if you can, share, and thanks for watching.